Marion Marley was addicted to possession. Did that make him a horrible person? No, the horrible people were the ones who denounced him in the first place. The horrible people were the ones whose deep, determined mindsets kept adding and adding onto Marley until they became self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, thanks to them, no one can say the name anymore without whispering, followed by a gasp of horror. All the while, Marley himself frolics through a field of demonic evil, taking control of innocent bystanders' spirits, mentally scarring them for life. It wasn't the addiction that made him a horrible person. It was the horrible people who made him a horrible person. Despite Marley's efforts to cope, such as puppeteering, learning sign language, and taking up origami, nothing took away from his gluttonous lust. It, of course, didn't help that nobody appreciated his folded-up swans. Now they all lay flattened on the floor of his chamber, as a reminder of what could have been, and as a jab in the face of what actually was. Time passes, and his drive gets stronger, his puppet's glue gets weaker, and his foldings grow more unraveled. Despite the withering of time, their creases remain. And throughout the North American continent, the Marley legacy has left the impression in every small, unsuspecting township from Florida to British Columbia. No matter where any of his helpless victims lived or traveled, a seeping snail trail of legacy and horrid memories follow. In most cases, Marley's victims became so scarred they would never even think to leave the confines of their own home. Yet, some are more fearless, whether courageous or foolish, that's not for me to judge. Still, any amount of bravery on either side of the spectrum is commendable. It takes massive amounts of fearlessness to escape your comfort zone, and even more massive amounts to escape your discomfort zone. And I would say the one who treks through the frosty peaks of the isolated Mount Monolith has the least fear of them all. A young woman with high resolve and low endurance collapsed by a tree stump next to a fresh still pond, and the face that watched her back from the other side of the water forced her into a sudden trance of reflection. All scribbly jumbles of thoughts bouncing around her skull slowed and flattened thanks to a peaceful swish of the wind and the jarring allure of that stranger in the pond.
Wow, she looks so sweet and innocent. I wish I could be safe and secure like her. Natalie Oriole? Never heard of her.
Ice wind breezed through Natalie's torn gloves, tickling her exposed scars. She lost her balance from the rocks tumbling below and lost her confidence from the birds cackling from above. A gnarled old tree beside her collapsed onto the ground, but Natalie wasn't going to let herself do the same, especially considering how far she'd gotten already. Yes, at last. After God knows how many days of trekking and traipsing, the first sign of civilization crawled out from the blue horizon. Welcome to Plainwood. Gloves required. The grass grew greener and more trimmed. Buildings sprung from the ground. A pleasant shade and light fog coated the floor. Just beyond Natalie stood a tall house, marked by its mysterious statue. A black, half-open hand with deep engravings on the palm. Instantly, Natalie perked up.
Oh, hell yes! Finally!
She drudged closer and closer to the backyard and sighed with a smile. It was a welcome sight coming out of the woods. A clean deck, a pool covered in leaves, stepstones, and rock tangles on the warm grass.
Peace, quiet, and comfort. Why don't I get this all the time?
Natalie hobbled up to the back-siding glass door. In her pocket sat a small black rock she had been guarding with her life, and soon enough, crash! She shattered the door open and snuck into the shadows. Sighs of relief turned into chuckles of ecstasy until grumbles of confusion echoed from the other side of the houses.
No worries, Nat. It's your imagination. You've been hearing background sounds in the mountains constantly. It's just some residual ringing. No big deal.
She took one careful step closer, making sure not to step on any creaky wooden planks or crumbly cellophane wrappers. Nothing about the inordinate amount of junk on the floor struck her as odd, since the last thing she wanted to do in her excited fatigue was think and reason. She was about to make it into the kitchen to set her bags down, until her foot got snagged in the waist of a pair of jeans, tripping her off course. Standing there was a tall woman decked out in all sweats and an unrested bitch face.
The hell?
Why is my imagination so rude? Oh, crap on a stick! This is the wrong house!
The woman crept closer little by little and looked Natalie dead in her unmistakable aqua eyes. The woman said nothing, but merely cocked her head and put her hands on her hips, waiting a response. Natalie opened her mouth in an attempt to explain herself, but the voice in her mind told her,
Run away before she does anything worse.
Without saying a word, she clutched her tingling hands over her rushing heart, shut her eyes tight with a blinding purple light shooting off her body, was gone in a flash. The woman rubbed her eyes, shook her head, and threw herself on the couch.
God, it's too late for stuff like this to be happening,
she said, pulling up a blanket and plugging in some earphones. Meanwhile, Natalie just barely squeezed out from the fence stakes. Towering up in front of her stood the same house. The statue looked down at her, holding its hand out as it's about to grab her by the head and toss her aside. There was no doubts. This house was the house she was looking for. But it was a jarring roadblock for her, and there was someone already living there. With her limbs jingling and refusing to budge, Natalie tipped her roller bag flat on the sidewalk for a breather. She instinctively reached in her pocket to grab her phone and pass the time until finding an idea. But there was an unsettling patch of nothing anymore. All she had left was her Blackstone, her bag, and her journal. Her quick breaths in and out grew longer and more collected as Natalie grabbed a pen and scratched down some thoughts.
Cherbourg, Dan et Moira. Je réussis. Je suis là. Je fais un tout petit bêtise à l'arrivée. Mais tout va bien maintenant. Enfin, je l'espère. Il y a une femme qui m'en veut maintenant. Mais tant que je le fous la paix, ma vie ici va être parfaite. Même si je penserai à vous à tout moment.
She clutched her pen tighter and continued.
Non. J'ai peur. Je ne veux pas faire ça. Mais je veux à la fois rester ici et rentrer chez nous. The
rest of her entry was ineligible. Her wrist had smudged the ink, and a teardrop had deluged everything else. Throughout the long, vast riverside road, there were houses down either direction as far as the eye could see. Yet with so many possible places to crash for the night on Plainwood's notoriously largest street, Natalie completely gave up attempting any more stunt. The risk was much too great to go door to door, break and enter, and keep playing Russian roulette for a house she could confidently tell was vacant. It's not my nature to bring up hindsight, but had she taken that risk, her new life could have played out much safer. Out of more than 200 buildings in Riverside, only 4 of them were occupied. But now, the space underneath a nearby bench would suffice, using a makeshift blanket of sweats and clothes from her suitcase. Once her hips touched the concrete, she got an uncomfortable poke in the thigh from the rock still in her pocket. Taking it out, she smirked as soon as the rock showed its first sign of glowing red. She chucked it as far into the distance as she could. The moment she heard that successful thud against a piece of wood in the dark forest, did an enormous weight lift off her shoulders. At last, after 20-something years, she could finally live without the heavy burden of that scarlet letter. It should have felt good, but it was just as stressful as the place she had escaped. Natalie had never lived on her own before, and already her first impression she gave was less than ideal.
God, they'll be talking about the... No, everything will be fine. One mishap. One small mishap is nothing. No one's going to be talking about me unless I make a reputation of myself. Everything's going to be good.
Natalie forced herself a thumbs up and plopped back down to sob herself calm. It was late o'clock, and all she wanted to do was end the evening so her first day of the rest of her life could begin. It was hard for her body to tell her mind to shut up and her mind to tell her body to calm down. But maybe once she got some shut-eye, all those worries would flow away like a river into a depressing trash can. But there still came that scab of worry in the back of her mind. That same scab I had telling her that everything was inevitably going to collapse on her soon enough. It was a good sleep, but she didn't enjoy it. Natalie Oriole awoke at the crack of dawn and stepped onto the crack of the sidewalk. The hope was that she would stop dwelling on her house mix-up from last night, but her thoughts kept living rent-free in her head. A few deep breaths in and out, and she regained her cool. She was still tired, but the new time zone was the least of her worries about adjusting to Plainwood. The sun's rays gave Nat a bright boost in confidence and emotion. Uneasy tears escaped her once or twice, but she shook them off to keep them from clouding her new outlook on life. Today was a new day, a new start, a new life. She stepped onto the pavement and looked around the environment. Plainwood was so much more beautiful now that she didn't have to trek up the frosty wooded mountain anymore. The houses across the street was especially pretty and quaint, with its fountain and trampled rock garden. Natalie meandered about the scenic streets of Plainwood, on the search for some place to have a decent breakfast. Up and down either side of Riverside, there was nothing but horizon and crisp blue sky and dark leaves above.
Well, one direction or the other.
She thought as she picked one to aimlessly amble down, yet with her luck, she of course ended up making the wrong choice. A short, scrappy man on the street barked into his phone.
Of course not. Do you know how much syrup is in Red Chup brand ketchup? My daughter uses it on her pancakes, for crying out loud. Get the Dijon ketchup and nothing less.
Now, I am in no way the person to consult for social skill advice. Only friendship I initiated in my life was with a spider I beckoned to crawl on my shoulder whenever I sat in my corner with my nose in my book. Still, I must have done something right when a woman named Jackie decided to sit next to me and start the path of one of the best friendships I've ever had. Clearly, something about me had sparked her to think, this is a pleasant person I would like to get to know. And there was no better feeling for a person in a new environment than to give off that impression. Even more ideally, their popularity and confidence may launch from the ground and skyrocket as it tries to escape the gravity of everyone else who thinks otherwise. So, of course, something about Natalie waving and giving a bare minimum hello had beckoned that short, scrappy man to quit pacing on the sidewalk and approach her for a brief introduction.
Hello.
The man lowered his phone and stared.
Did you just say hello to me?
He held the phone back to his ear,
I'm gonna have to call you back.
flipped it closed, and coughed into his fist. Slow caution weaved about his words.
Hello yourself. Are you, lost?
A flush of red heat brewed up behind Natalie's face.
Did I say that too loud or am I that noticeable? I'm just looking for a place to eat. I moved here last night.
During some seconds of silence, the man grew an unmeasurable, toothy grin. His demeanor did a complete 180 and started spewing out word after word with no apparent spaces or pauses for breathing.
Which is why you're not familiar to me. Of course, I was wondering why that was the case. Well, now I'm intrigued. We didn't properly introduce ourselves. I'm Kyle Ling, head caterer of the Snowstone Lodge, not to brag. Pleasure to meet a new face. I love your outfit, by the way.
Thank you. I don't think anything you said had anything to do with each other. Kyle? Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie.
She got ready for an informal shake, but the greeting was cut short as Natalie unsurely held out her left hand, barely covered by what was left of her glove.
What the hell?
Kyle screamed as he ran off, flailing and diving into a bush. Suddenly, there was much less of a need to find something to eat now. Natalie released a ugh and flopped next to the closest bench. The more she thought back on everything, the more of a tingly, stinging sensation traveled through her. She stood right back up, in a desperate search for a place for some quick privacy. Not too far from the second bench where she crashed was a quaint 3-story building with a wooden sign hanging on a chain. Evero Cafe and Inn, where comfort is our #1 priority. Dingle ding chimed the doorbell. The lobby was surprisingly empty for a cafe on a Sunday morning. In Plainwood, this kind of emptiness was the norm for the Ever Oak. No one except those who already lived on Riverside would dare frequent the same place frequented by the body thief, the white demon, and God forbid the zombie puppeteer. Put that with the fact that the building stood just a block away from the hand statue house, it was a miracle Matt Kennett hadn't already shut the place down. Quick to avoid another ennui for the morning, Natalie dashed straight to the bathroom for a moment of serene sanctuary. She soon came back out with her appetite regained and her morale ready for a third encounter since the move. Third time's always the charm. She picked up a random stool by the counter and slid up to the person in charge. Dawn Fay, the owner, turned around from the bar and gave her a wide, optimistic, dimpled grin.
Hey, hey!
Hi.
Dawn frowned and stepped a bit closer.
Need a bit of a pick-me-up this morning?
Please. Just a caramel latte for now.
Natalie rifled through her bag and grabbed a disheveled stack of bills. She didn't count them or check the price, but a wad of 20s, 10s, 100s, and 5s seemed like enough, accounting for inflation and the exchange rate for foreign currency. Dawn raised an eyebrow and took the cash, returning the change in ones.
You from the States by any chance?
Yeah, New Jersey,
Natalie looked at her money and realized,
Oh my god, I'm sorry. I should have hit an automatic ATM machine before I came here. I can go now, it's not that big of a...
Oh no, don't worry about any automatic telling machines. We accept these little green portraits of white people, no problem. I'm more just...
They trailed off as her eyes moved steadily towards Natalie's wallet. Dawn leaned in a little bit closer to her and spoke in a more quiet, somber, I'm not angry, I'm just a bit disappointed tone.
Listen, I'm not gonna report you. You're new here, and I don't like the policy anyways, but we typically handle things with our right hands here.
Natalie withdrew her arm behind her back and blushed.
I am so sorry.
No worries. You didn't know. Like I said, it doesn't matter to me. It just may matter more to other people, you know?
I completely understand.
Desperate to end the conversation, Natalie scooched back an inch and took a sip from her cup.
Did you give me decaf?
What does that mean?
Is there any caffeine in this?
I mean, we have vitamins in our water, but that's about it. Usually it's my wife who's telling about all that science stuff like mitochondria and dopamine.
Right, but...
Natalie dipped any intention she had to refute. Counter-arguments were never her strong suit, and she certainly wasn't going to dispute the first decent person she met here. She simply took her cup and headed over back to the lobby.
Yeah, thank you so much.
The front door dingle-dinged once more. Dawn and Natalie turned their heads to the young woman in an Easter egg-colored jogging getup. The woman brought a certain sunny vibe to her. She carried just the right amount of optimism and extroversion to bother only the most stoic of people.
Hey, Dawn! How's it going?
The woman said with a smile, still a little winded and out of it.
Have you looked at our flag lately? Like, what is the symbolism behind it?
As she stayed resting and playfully spinning on a stool, she instantly perked up at the sight of Natalie in the corner.
Oh my god, she looks so sad and alone. Who is she?
Oh, I didn't catch their name. They just moved here from the States, though.
Are you seriousing me? We've got another American? Oh, this is awesome! I'm gonna go over and introduce myself.
The woman sped over to Natalie's corner and pulled up a seat.
Hey, how's it going?
Natalie swallowed a gulp of coffee and raised an eyebrow, slightly lifting herself up from her seat.
Fine?
Well, sometimes that's all you can ask for, right? So, I heard you just moved here. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm from the US.
No way, me too! Look at that, we've already got something in common.
Something about this seemed too good to be true. How could she have nothing but bad experiences in town and suddenly stumble upon the warmest, coziest people in place? This had to be going somewhere. The best thing to do would just be play along.
Oh, cool. So you're new here too then?
No, I've been here for a few years now. Pretty weird place of the places I've been, but it's home, right?
Pulling her gloves on tighter, Natalie nodded and smirked with a noise and only could have meant home. Yeah, that is definitely totally a concept I associate with good feelings. She swallowed and all she mustered was,
That's good.
Instead, her mind started to drift away. Morgan was wearing a vague scent, but whatever it was, it sent Natalie to a pleasant, familiar place in her memory.
I mean, I sort of knew what I was getting into, but it's definitely going to take some time to get used to.
Ah, see, you got the upper hand. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was just plopped into this place, like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Morgan. Hi, Morgan. I have a demon in my brain giving me an insatiable desire to kill. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm just here to buy some extension cords.
Natalie kept her uncertain smirk without anything new to add. Morgan continued.
Nah, but for real, you're gonna love it here. Just do what I do and go with the flow. Do like a Roman and you'll fit in like that. Oh, and speaking of, me and my friends usually crash here after work for the evening. You're welcome to join us if you want. Or if you want to keep unpacking at your own place, perfectly fine too.
That's so nice of you.
She spaced out, thrown off by the complete view of the statue house from the window.
This is a hotel, right? I think I'm actually going to check in here.
Oh, dude, you can be my roomie.
I
Trust me, it's a lot less expensive to share a double room. I can haggle with Dawn. Not a big deal.
Wow, okay, that is super generous of you. Are you really sure you want to do that?
Positive. 'Cause between you and me, all the other girls I know here are a bit of a bummer, you know?
Right.
Morgan jerked up from her seat.
All right. So, I'm sweaty and disgusting. I'm gonna go up to my room for a quick shower. I'll get everything taken care of later. Meantime, you can shoot the breeze with Dawn. They are the nicest person you'll ever meet. So I'll see you in a bit.
Morgan looked back up and pursed her mouth. She had been paying more attention to the fact that she was having a conversation with her than to the conversation itself.
You never told me your name. Did you?
Natalie's eyes widened for a brief second.
No, I guess I didn't. I'm Natalie.
Oh, that's a pretty name. I'm Morgan.
That's a cool name too.
Thanks, I got it for my birthday. All right, I'll catch you later, Nat. Ali. Sorry, can I call you Nat?
Whatever works.
She responded, eyelids lowering. The door to the stairwell slammed closed, and Natalie turned her head back up to Dawn.
She's a bit of a handful, isn't she?
Dawn nodded.
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind though, I try to keep gossip here at a minimum. Want me to top off your latte?
I'm good. Thanks.
Natalie said, taking out her journal and adding a new entry.
J'ai peur d'un Moira. Tout va mieux maintenant. Je pense c'est quoi va me plaire.
Dingle Ding, a slender, towering woman with flowing auburn hair and an unremarkable gray tee, stepped up at the entrance, eyeing the lobby corner to corner as she always would. Unlike Morgan, she did not bring a sunny vibe to the environment, nor did she bring a stormy or gloomy one. At most, she brought a quick gust of vibe that would blow into your jacket and soon be forgotten. Dawn grinned at the door.
Morning, Eileen!
Morning, my love.
What can I get for you today?
I'm thinking of mixing it up this time. Let's see. You can get me...
As Eileen scanned the menu and thought, she locked glances with Natalie and her unmistakable aqua eyes. That glare. That was such a familiar glare. Without any second of hesitation, she promptly turned around and strolled back to the exit.
The hell out of here as fast as you can.
Hideous encounters were nothing new for Plainwooders. Elementary school assemblies would warn students what to do in the event that they get possessed. Middle school health classes preached the importance of abstinence from sex. High school curricula required at least 2 years of spirits classes to learn the history, culture, do's, and don'ts of being a demon. Yet by the time you graduate, you would already have your own personal ghost story to tell. Eileen Pritchard was a late bloomer. Despite living in the infamous Beacon for Spirits, she herself had never gotten an encounter until her mishap with Natalie. Until then, she'd always felt a combination of smugness and disappointment about it, and had developed a more practical, unbiased view of the culture of encounters. Now though, for the first time since high school graduation, a mix of extastation and discomfort had surged up inside of her. After her 2 seconds at the Ever Oak, Eileen made her way back home and jumped onto her couch. Her crossword puzzle book sat on her lap while her favorite true crime podcast, Smells Like Murder to Me, by Anand Denoma, played in the background. Between every crossword solution she'd find, she would flip to the back of the book and scribble random notes and thoughts in the extra pages.
And despite numerous complaints, it took authorities 7 days to investigate the horrid odor that lingered around Knox Avenue. It was a combination of wet dog and bacon. What could that mean, Jason thought with it.
Eileen clicked off the episode and tossed her book to the other end of the couch. Eventually, there was an uncomfortable truth she was going to have to address, and she needed someone to help get it off her chest. It was now just a question of which hatchling for the mother bird to spew her thoughts and theories onto. She took out her phone and mindlessly scrolled through her messages. She found the perfect person to chat with and started typing, HH, did you see the... But after seconds of freezing reflection, she backspaced the entire thing and put the phone back in her pocket. Instead, she lifted herself from the couch, stretched a few times, put on a gray coat, and headed out to visit her in person instead. A buzzing theremin tune vibrated from Eileen's pocket, stopping in her tracks 3 steps out. The ringtone was instantly recognizable and recognizably annoying, always making her wish her cousin would just text her like a normal person. At the third to last ring, she picked it up and waited for him to say something.
Eileen, is everything okay?
I mean, everything's normal, but why do you ask?
Matt always had a certain excitement in his words, whether happy or nervous. It had a certain vivid light to it. Sometimes he'd just get too carried away with it and speak in a speedily jumbled speech. He breathed in, held his breath, and exhaled.
Late last night I saw a glow up by your house, then this morning before sunrise I saw someone I never saw before running off from your place. Just checking in.
Matt, out of every piece of bullcrap you just said, the fact that you think the time before sunrise counts as morning is the only one that concerns me.
But everything's okay.
Matt, you don't need to worry about me. I'm fine. Nothing happened.
Right, but can you just humor me and come over for a second?
Sure.
Immediately, she hung up and jumped straight across the road to his house. Without a second to spare, after knocking on the door, Matt dragged her in and sat her at the table. He felt her forehead for chills, patted her around her arms for auras, stared deep into her eyes for discoloration, and examined all her revealed skin for any other markings. His right hand was holding a flat geode, while his left hand was hidden snug in his pocket.
I sure wish Dr. Matt Kennett made house calls.
Every time you call me doctor, the Vivian face-shaped knife in my brain cuts 1 layer deeper.
He grabbed a salt shaker.
Close your eyes.
And splashed it all around her.
Just be happy I don't do this every day.
Eileen spat salt from her mouth and struggled to open her eyes back.
Matt, I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about.
You are? Oh, well, come on, you should have told me that sooner.
I did.
Yeah, but that was over the phone, you know that.
He put his salt shaker back on the table and casually nudged the door to his rock cabinet closed.
You're probably hanging out with the Fays this morning, but you're welcome to stay for breakfast.
Probably not going to the Ever Oak this morning. I've got papers to grade. Plus, I've been hankering for salty over sweet lately.
Perfect. I actually just made 2 omelets.
Wonderful.
Eileen stayed seated, fiddling, twirling, and fidgeting with her pen. She and Matt could never stay seated without needing to fiddle with something. That was a family thing.
So, what are you up to, besides everything else you said?
Eileen had been scribbling in her notebook during this time. Had Matt not carried such a noticeable voice, she probably would have kept writing, as if no words were spoken.
Oh, usual. No, I lied. I think we've got a new neighbor. I already met them. They seem nice. Nothing out of the ordinary, though.
Are you seriousing me?
He jumped out of his seat and danced in place with a giggity sing-song voice.
Yes! This means I'm doing my job right.
Mm-hmm.
She rolled her eyes and opened her notebook back to the page she was writing in.
Why?
But she trailed off and kept writing instead.
Why? How are people moving here?
She snapped it close and leaned back in her chair.
You don't seem excited.
I don't. Well, rest assured, there is just so much excitation on the inside.
That's good. Hey, we should introduce ourselves. Where do they live?
I'm guessing somewhere on Riverside.
Oh, no! They're just asking for an encounter! I need to warn them!
You could do that, or you could just accept that nobody has ever gotten an encounter since the, MM incident.
Just the mention of the initials made Matt shudder. But he shook off any underlying fear, but now the possibility had infected his mind.
Well, I still have to introduce myself, and I don't know about you, but I care about what people think about me, so I want to make a good first impression anyway.
No better first impression than scaring the ever-loving crap out of someone you just met. I mean, look at you and Viv. You guys are besties now because of that.
Right, and I'm sure you doing the opposite is why you and Dawn are such best friends?
Shut up.
I'm sorry.
You're good. It's not your fault.
Eileen snapped both her fingers to change subjects, a common tic she would unconsciously show.
So, I know she goes to the Ever Oak, so you probably don't want to go there and greet her by yourself.
She does. Okay, maybe I can wait for her to introduce herself to me? That actually works out better because it won't make me the one responsible for our relationship.
And I'm sure that would work if she pranced door to door all around town with her hands folded like, can you, talk to me, please?
Eileen smirked, popping another forkful of egg in her mouth.
Do these taste a bit irony to you?
Yes! I used lots of spinach. Helps keep your blood pumping. I ran out of kale because Cliff needed some to ward off the October protesters. Said it's indistinguishable from bug spray or something for some reason. I don't know. I think it's good. Well, I'm rambling again. I'd hate to keep you here if you have any other things to do on this beautiful day.
It sounds like you want me to leave.
What? No, never. If I could, I would have you around all day.
If you want me to leave, you can say it to my face. I have thick skin. I can handle it.
I hate when you do this.
Well, thanks for breakfast anyway, Matt. I'll see you around, okay? Keep me updated on this newbie, all right?
She ruffled Matt's already bedhead hair as a goodbye and ran back to her house. Matt walked out to the porch to watch her safely return across the street. As his mind began to wander steeper down the cliff, the more she left his property.
Isn't it funny how we got new residents after so long? And on Riverside, even.
The statue up on Eileen's roof stood brooding over him, sending chills up and down his spine. And once Eileen finally disappeared, the chills crept up closer behind Matt, ready to strike.
No, that's not going to be the case. Unless it is. Like she said, it's been so long since stuff like this last happened. So we're due for something soon. Besides, Eileen would have warned me if it were something serious. How do you know she didn't? It's cold today. I need a heavier scarf.
Of all the customs and cultures in Plainwood, the house with the statue was no doubt the most prominent. To any non-Plainwooder, the house was nothing more than a building with a stone hand on the roof. Just a curious taste in architecture. To those who grew up with it, though, it was an omen, a reminder. No one knew exactly what it meant, but they knew it had a left hand with a scarred palm, and that was all they needed to fuel their aversion. The sensible ones would simply make the effort to avoid it and the risk that comes with it. The more devout ones, on the other hand, would take the time to make sure it didn't cause any harm for anyone else. Matt Kennett was the type to do both at the same time. Kyle Ling was more of the type to do the complete opposite at the same time. Right on schedule came marching a handful of people down Riverside Road, like the world's worst holiday parade. With Kyle as the Grand Marshal, whenever they had the chance, they would travel up and down the streets of Plainwood from Town Hall to Ever Oak, carrying signs, hammers, and the occasional unlit torches. Riding against the many imperfections of the town, Eileen took in the bitter hatred, streamed at her as if she were soaking in cool mist on a hot summer day.
Tear down the hand house! Expel Eileen Pritchett!
The crowd chanted. They all grouped together, against the front door to block her out. Eileen never gave the slightest interest in them, but she had just a noticeable flick in her voice that showed she was enjoying at least some of it.
Oh, you guys always make an effort to drop by my house every day. I'm just so flattered by that. Your slogan's a little bit overt today. And I would have appreciated some more clever wordplay, like, hands off, Eileen Witchett! But you are showing some nice improvement. Now, can you all scooch over just a bit? I'm actually trying to get somewhere else this time.
She nudged her way through the crowd up to the front porch of a neighboring building. Kaya Ling stood and shouted,
Don't shrug this off, heathen! We've got a new demon in town thanks to you!
Normally, Eileen wouldn't have batted an eye at such an accusation, but this one caught her off guard for some reason. Far be it from her to show that to them, though. She held back her flinch and yelled,
Hey, buddy, I've got 5 demons for you right here!
Yanking off her left glove and wiggling her hand all around for everyone to see. The crowd jumped in shock at the crude gesture and charged even closer to her, at which point she slid in and slammed the door closed. Faye's Riverside Clinic was a quaint and homey place to be, and perhaps the best place to get some true peace and quiet without anyone knowing or caring where you were. The building sat on Riverside Road, which of course wasn't the best place to attract clientele, but it most likely wouldn't have been any more popular if it were situated in any other road or street. Plainwood grew up with a dedication to souls and spirits, so the need for a licensed medical doctor was relatively low. In fact, it had only been a decade or two since the devoted yet controversial Isaac and Vincent Fay badgered Town Hall to start considering modern science. For a superstitious state like Plainwood, a decent medical center was a step towards progress, much like how ordering salad in a steakhouse is a step towards veganism. Still, the building was less of a utility than it was a hideaway, as no one would dare even touch the front door if they had the slightest concern about their social, political, or emotional reputation. So, naturally, Eileen was quick to snag a seat in the waiting room. She came to visit the place every weekend, regardless of how well she was feeling. She just liked the excuse to talk to Vivian Fay. This time, though, her visit more had the ulterior motive of asking her friend out to coffee at Everoak. It wasn't anything romantic, at least not anymore. But today, she needed an extra emotional buffer to set foot back in the lobby. A door opened at the end of the room with the voices of passing conversation.
Yep, it's just what we in the med business call the chills. It's nothing to worry about.
But if I went to see Matt Kennett?
Matt Kennett is not a valid second opinion. You're totally fine. Just be sure to drink a lot of water and get some rest.
So I didn't get possessed?
No. Have a great day. Don't forget to tell all your friends to come visit.
Oh, and this wooden stake ruined my head.
It's all in your head.
That's the problem.
Door slammed in the face. The doctor sighed, threw off her gloves, and flipped her clipboard of meaningless scribbles back to the front page. She adjusted her glasses and muttered,
Not like anyone else is going to be coming in, but, next.
She looked around the waiting room and eventually brought herself to a smile.
Oh, hey, Eileen.
Hey, Viv. How's business?
Terrific. I just finished all of an endounement before my first and only patient. I'm ready to humor you with whatever reason you came to see me.
I had an encounter last night.
God, this ought to be good.
It was the middle of the night. A girl all wrapped up in dirt and junk. She was staring directly at me. No emotion. And then, poof! She disappeared. In like a cloud of smoke or light.
Vivian took out her clipboard and pretended to write on it.
Sounds to me like a psychotic hallucination. This type of thing is typically caused by a lack of sleep and hanging out with Matt way too much.
You're an absolute buzzkill.
And yet you came to see me anyway. That's so sweet.
So I finally have something interesting to talk about, and you still just shrug it off like that. I could have been possessed,
Oh yeah, I'm sure you could have.
Vivian rolled her eyes in disdain while putting her equipment back.
So what's actually going on in your life? Anything exciting? Make any new friends?
She smirked, tongue in her cheek, considering how small and condensed Plainwood was and how secluded it was from what constituted somewhere. Questions like that were always facetious. Not to mention, no one in Plainwood could ever stomach making friends anyway. Eileen was quick to drop the subject.
I mean, Other than the mentally scarring experience, nope, nothing comes to mind. Has anything ever happened on Riverside?
The two flinched as chanting from the outside burst from the crowd.
Don't answer that.
She turned back to Vivian and then grimaced.
And speaking of, Kyle and his underlings are outside again. The least you could do is save face and put your gloves on.
Not gonna happen.
Vivian rubbed her ears and stretched.
Wow, I can't even believe I tuned them out for this long.
She looked at the clock and opened the window and yelled,
What the hell, Kyle? Eileen is more protestable than me all of a sudden? What did I do to you?
while smugly and spitefully waving her bare left hand at them just as Eileen did. Vivian was quick to close the blinds as they ran closer to the window.
Don't get me wrong, I hate these guys, but the gesture was a bit overkill, don't you think?
Felt good though, and now I get to close for the day for unsafe working conditions? Yeah, we can talk more at the Ever Oak. Cover for me, please. Diesel!
Vivian blew a kiss as she bolted for the back exit. Eileen was a quick-witted soul, but when it came to abrupt goodbyes, she struggled. All that came to mind was,
Put your gloves on.
The more Vivian disappeared in the distance, the more the goodbye resonated in Eileen's head. The more she realized she hated everything. She played back the entire exchange over and over, cringing every time. She slid back onto the front porch, standing in silence, blowing a singular puff of air into the hanging wind chime, as she always would after talking to Vivian. Straightening herself back, Eileen squeezed through the rest of Kyle and his group and headed right to the Ever Oak. It was painful to stand there at the front entrance, and even more painful to try to touch the door handle. The promise of that noticeable dingle-ding put too much pressure on her, but she managed to muster enough courage to grab a door handle and immediately release it and run over to the window in the back of the building. She meagerly knocked and stood back with her hands folded behind her back. A man on the inside leaned his head back over his chair to find Eileen on the other side of the glass. He blinked twice, cleared his throat, and hopped out of his seat.
Hey, Eileen. Want me to unlock that for you?
If you would be so kind.
After the man slid the window open, Eileen crawled through and aimed herself toward the couch. She landed on the hardwood floor 2 centimeters next to the carpet. The man went back to his seat and picked his papers and pen back off the coffee table. He flicked his reading glasses down off his forehead.
So, what's happening today, Lino?
He said, straightening his white shirt.
You catch up on a non-denouement?
Didn't really need to. Bacon and a wet dog smell. Yeah, no one in Glanville owns a dog. But there was that butcher we met in episode 6 who went to the beach in episode 9. The narrator put all that fluff in between, so we'd forget about the fact that there was a schnauzer who knocked over his kid's sandcastle, and the smell just stuck. Butcher's the murderer. He hid the body in the freezer and pinned it on the delivery boy. Pretty sure Jason's gonna turn out to either be a murderer or an accomplice too. But we'll see how that plays out. Oh, also, I'm getting haunted. Not to brag or anything.
She gave herself an encouraging nod and scooched next to him.
What's new with you, Welso? Grading papers? How's that going?
Patrick Wells was a man of few words, but often with good reason. Most of the time, he would be carefully calculating the best phrases that would lead to the most practical conversations and least hurtful feelings. When it came to conversations with his best friend, any attempt at extracting information with follow-up questions would be useless, as it would just spiral into a never-ending back and forth of wit, snark, and sarcasm. Despite times when he would love to object, the best guide to do for a serious talk would be to let her guide the conversation entirely.
Well, logarithms. You know how they are. The red pen's inevitable.
Do you think teaching may help?
That's a good idea. You should try that sometime and let me know how it goes.
Eileen said, half ignoring him. She pulled out her pen and opened her notes back up. She arched her neck to get a good view around Patrick before sinking it back down into her book.
You meet her yet?
Who?
Dark ponytail, purple sweats, hiking boots?
Oh, you mean the person who has a name that isn't their clothing? No, not yet. To be honest, it's not a priority. She seems like she needs a while to adjust to the place, and if she's American, our plain Woodian closeness is going to seem a little off-putting.
That's hardly an excuse. You're the least off-putting person I know.
All right, I'll be less subtle. We're the most hated group of friends in Plainwood. So, I'd rather not force our reputation onto her like that.
Patrick and Eileen turned around to discreetly spy. Natalie was sitting at the lobby bar with Vivian, Dawn, and Morgan, laughing and chatting.
Well, you're a bit late for that. Looks like she met half of us already. Who do you think was the first to talk?
Okay, that hardly matters. But if I had to wager, definitely gonna say Morg. Are you gonna go up and meet her?
Nah, I like your idea. I'd prefer she introduce herself to me, but then again, that's never my choice, is it?
Dawn called to Eileen over from the bar.
Eileen, do you want to come over and say hey to Natalie?
Of course, my love.
Eileen responded, all muscles in her face superficially tightened like a stiff billboard model. She let herself detense and turned back to Patrick with a strained,
"Can you come with me, please?"
Eileen pushed Patrick in front of her while simultaneously trying to get him to follow behind. This was it. It was finally time to swallow that fear and reunite with the person who may or may not have mentally scarred her. The person who may or may not be a new neighbor and a new friend. There was simply too much for Eileen to consider. Too many possibilities of what would happen, who Natalie actually was, why and how she came to a remote village in the mountains of all places. Her game face was on and her pen was ready. She let go of Patrick's wrist and slid up next to Vivian. Already everything seemed to slow down. Her comfort zone kept growing smaller and smaller until she eventually had to step out. She changed personalities and put on her friendly facade, staring directly into Natalie's psyche.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Natalie stared straight through Eileen, deep into the white void of confusion.
Again? Am I being punked? We're halfway. Crap!
A rushing wave of remorse flashed back inside as memories of last night cascaded onto her all at once.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry about last night. I didn't know that was your house. I was taking a hike after I moved in and I must have gone last. I shouldn't have run away like that. God, I'm so sorry. I've had a very stressful week.
With how much Eileen actually talks about her life with her friends, the rest were clueless as to what she was talking about. Still, it didn't sound good. While Morgan and Dawn always tried to see Eileen as a gentle giant hiding in 30 pounds of spiked armor, Vivian tended to see her as a sorceress wearing a gentle giant's pelt like a coat. There was no predicting how Eileen would react to re-encountering an embarrassing situation, so Vivian instinctively braced herself for whatever trouble was surely going to brew. It was even worse than she thought. Eileen was smiling. The notorious Eileen smile was never a good sign. It was the kind of smile she would make when someone insults her, the kind of smile she would give a waiter who gets her wrong order, the kind of smile she shows the Riverside rioters every day, the kind of smile the Welsh would call a glass wen, a smile filled so much to the brim with hatred, sarcasm, and bitterness that its bite ignores all outward defense and cuts right into the heart.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. Hikers get lost in the woods all the time. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen Cliff Rubus wind up in my yard instead of his log cabin.
She circled around the counter and introduced everyone, ignoring the fact they already met before she did.
Anyway, I'm Eileen Pritchett, and this is Dawn and Vivian Fay, Patrick Wells, Morgan Bailey, and... Matt Kennett wants to meet you too, but he's a bit busy right now. Welcome to Riverside Road. Do you want anything? I can buy you an orange juice or something.
That sounds nice. Thank you.
Natalie caught herself smiling, as if she hadn't just been guilt-tripped into making a friend.
I guess we should start all of this over, huh?
She held out her hand for a shake and said,
Hi, Eileen. Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie.
Eileen could have corrected Natalie for any of the culture faux pas she just made. In fact, if there was any culture critic, the one whose sole aim was to find the bad inside everyone. Plainwitters don't wave or shake as a greeting, thanks to their great sensitivity to manual gestures. Plainwitters also don't say hello, hi, or even a single hey, due to their close, tight-knit values of community and informality. A proper plainwitter would greet someone with a friendly hey hey and a single head nod. Natalie had essentially said salutations and then flipped Eileen the bird. That kind of offense boiled in Eileen, but had quickly stepped flat. Something made Eileen not scare off Natalie with too much culture shock. All she did was write some observations in her book on her lap. Natalie retracted her arm and scratched the back of her head.
So, what do you do?
Natalie asked, leaning on the table. She hated sitting down. It always felt like a sign of comfort and familiarity of her surroundings. Eileen lifted her head from the table and took a sip from her orange juice.
Well, as fate would have it, I teach 9th grade spirits.
Teach?
You're one to talk. You just play videos the whole period.
No, I play videos the whole period. And have a PhD.
9th grade spirits, Eileen?
Yep. History of Halloween. How to deal with encounters. All that jazz. Very self-directed. I don't like pushing one set of beliefs on students who are just learning this stuff. I never want to be the one responsible if kiddos develop an irrational fear of stupid myths, like my house or the ever-so-popular left hand.
So, what do you do then?
Sit back, observe, make sure no one goes down each other's throats. It's like I'm not even there.
Despite her warning to Eileen, it was hard for Natalie to keep eye contact with her. She often caught herself staring just to the right at Patrick Wells.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm Patrick.
He smirked. Following his philosophy, he aimed to stay amiable while staying as unobtrusive as possible. Vivian, on the other hand, had no such philosophy. She was more the uninhibited type, where she would be driven entirely by excitement and emotion. And clearly a new resident in the most notoriously avoided street in Plainwood is reason for enthusiasm.
So, Nat, where are you from? Tell us more about it.
All eyes turned towards her, waiting for a response. This inescapable limelight lit a spark in Natalie. She shoved her arms in her pockets, pouted, and muttered to herself.
Bah, j'habitais en enfer et je déteste ma putain vie.
Vivian's eyes widened as she jerked back an inch. With a tentative accent, she responded,
Désolé de l'entendre. Tout va bien maintenant?
Natalie's face rinsed red, her head sinking into her shoulders.
Did you understand that?
I could pick up a few words.
I'm sorry, I've just had a very stressful few months. You spent 20-something years in a cramped city in New Jersey every day, and one day you're just dropped somewhere else on your own and expected to fend for yourself. I'm actually really glad I got to know Morgan. I don't think I would have had the courage to push myself and meet new people this quickly.
I got you!
Good to hear. It's none of my business, but I definitely recommend meeting some people outside of our group too. Plainwooders are a little eccentric, but above all, we love being with people.
I don't know. I'd prefer to be with this group. I sort of made a bad first impression with other people here. I don't think Kyle likes me.
Kyle is the most adorable, hot-headed little monkey I've ever met.
The rest of the table groaned at Morgan.
That's easy for the conformist to say.
Kyle hates everyone. He's just one bad experience everyone's going to have at some point. I can attest. Don can attest. Matt Kennett can attest. I also don't recommend making friends with Matt Kennett until you know him a bit more. He's a great guy. He just can be a handful.
Let her form her own opinions, jerk nut.
Jesus, Eileen. Excuse me if I don't want him giving her the spiel on her first week here.
It felt like all of Natalie's body was screwing in tighter and tighter. Things were getting so awkward. Being talked to by a large group was unnerving enough, but being talked about felt wrong. Would she dare speak up?
The spiel?
Nothing you need to worry about. Let me rephrase that. Nothing you need to be an expert about. Plainwoods had a bit of history with spirits and demons, especially after the whole Mary and Marley incident. Everyone in town was like, more protection, less possession, and crap propaganda like that. All because, ooh, a house has a statue in it. Take it from me. The worst omen that building brings is a single red-headed lesbian in her 30s. Listen, if anyone warns you about the statue or my house or the left hand, you can ignore them. It's just an old made-up legend to draw people in. Like drop bears or fried butter. You never have to worry about lefties. They don't exist. And there are plenty of other things to worry about.
Natalie sank into her stool, sliding onto the floor like a roll of slime.
Cool. I was really worried about that. Thanks for reassuring me.
She completely slid onto the floor and picked herself up, physically and emotionally.
Well, it was great getting to know all of you. I should get my room ready.
Everyone stared as she left until she disappeared behind the stairwell. Vivian pouted.
And she hates us, doesn't she?
Did we do too much?
She left to check into her room.
Crap, she's going now? I need to catch up.
Morgan said, dashing off. Vivian continued.
I bet she took Practical Patrick's advice.
Patrick didn't do anything.
Exactly.
You know what? I've still got some Descartes essays to grade, I think. Therefore, I'm going to head out. Take care, guys.
With just Eileen and the Fays left, the three sat staring at each other like a social standoff. Breaking the silence was always a difficult thing to do, given the right combination of people. Dawn tried to put on a smile.
So, aren't they nice?
Eileen turned to Dawn, exhaled, turned to Vivian, and said,
That's who I was talking about, Viv.
Vivian racked her brain as to what she meant. The idea hit her. Not like lightning, but more like a single droplet of rain.
Who? The person who clearly didn't want to steal anyone's soul?
Look beyond the appearances, Viv. There's always something going on inside someone.
It's always spirits with this woman.
Vivian scoffed and turned away towards Dawn.
Oh, I forgot to close up the clinic. Could you watch my place for me while I'm gone?
Dawn nodded. Once Vivian left, Dawn picked the discussion right back up.
You were so into talking with her though, Eileen. I saw that cheery smile you always give me.
Eileen thought aloud to herself.
I guess it is true. I didn't feel the same as I did during the encounter.
First impressions are usually wrong. Plus, if they were after you, they would have already done it, right? Marnie never held back.
You're not wrong. She was pretty nice. All right. I'll give her some space for now, and let fate decide the rest.
That's the spirit.
But not to play devil's advocate.
Eileen said she flipped through her notes, growing back her notorious smile.
I'm pretty sure the girl's a lefty.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, or listening, rather, to Nathaniel Aberdeen's incomplete biography of Revenants Anthology, otherwise known as NAIBRA, otherwise known as Aberdeen's Anthology, and probably going to be changing that name in the near future just to be a little less convoluted, but, you know. This is only a pilot episode, so I'm just going to do this like to gain feedback, gauge what went right, what didn't, but, you know, expect everything goes well in actual episodes in the near future, hopefully. But that's not what I'm here for. I have been working on this project for, like, so long, and I am so excited that it finally gets to see the light of day. And I would like to especially thank all of my talented voice actors. They are the best, my god. I would like to thank Nell for voicing Natalie, Summer Rose for voicing Eileen, Andres Echeverri for voicing Matt, Fyrus DR for voicing Dawn, Ladi Da for voicing Vivian, Flame Ming M for voicing Patrick, Anna Kate Hindman for voicing Morgan, Terozu for voicing Kyle, John Clark for voicing Aberdeen, the narrator, and myself for voicing all of the other extras, but you don't really need to know that. Anyway, thank you so much again for listening, and have a great 2023. I will see you all in the future. Alright, take care.